So we've seen there are 6. These are the first 3. And as you can see from the translation from Murad, he did not actually translate them. He left the question marks, which is phenomenal. Then we can actually zero in on those and say, hey, what is going on? So we will take it as if that word, which is now used as tranquility, did not really exist in the 7th century, or at least Murad did not actually find it. So what happens when we actually look at Murad's translation and we replace that question mark with the word Shekinah? Well, for example, we have there in Surah 2, verse 248, and we'll not read the full verse, just we'll focus on these small bits and pieces. Advance you in it a Shekinah from your Lord. If that is not there, it would be advance you in it a tranquility from your Lord. Now, all things considered, when we know that the book talks about Jesus as the Messiah, and there are all of these Jewish stories and so on, I think Shekinah makes more sense. But I think it's the next one that gives the game away, which is in Surah 9, verse 26. Because look what it says. Thereafter, Allah descended his question mark over his messenger and over the believers. Now, if that now would be translated as thereafter Allah descended his tranquility, it's like, what does that even mean? Is it like a bucket load full of chamomile? What is that? But this book keeps talking about Jesus as the Messiah and so on. When we take that into account and other things that we're going to see in a minute, imagine this was read as thereafter Allah descended his Shekinah, which would be understood as the Spirit, over his messenger and over the believers. Now, that would be understood from a Christian sense, that it is talking about the Holy Spirit being sent down over his messenger, Jesus, and the believers, the apostles. And with the last one as well, so Allah descended his tranquility over him. If we think that that is the Holy Spirit, it would make sense. Actually, we can just even replace Shekinah with Holy Spirit, and the verses make a lot more sense than otherwise. Of course, Muslims would have to say, no, this means tranquility. But that doesn't really mean anything. What does it mean? He made them peaceful? It didn't really quite work out that way. So the meaning of Holy Spirit in those verses, I think, makes it very, very clear that the people who wrote this book, they knew what they were writing. It was Shekinah, but later it had to change. And thanks to Murad, we can now see that even he couldn't find this Sakina word in the 7th century, indicating that it was a later fabrication within the language in order to hide something that would have been obvious to anyone who listened to these verses. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, for sure. We can go back here for a second. The first thing, obviously, is that always want to point this out, is that the in that we have here could be he just as much as it, or rather, sorry, not in, but it could be he just as much as it is it, because it's ambiguous in the Arabic script. So advance you in him a Holy Spirit from your Lord. This kind of language just makes more sense, and it rings to the ear, because this is something that we would expect firstly from an Abrahamic text, and it's also just straight up New Testament theology. So it's actually quite simple if you're familiar with the basics. So obviously, when it comes to this Sakina, and like you were saying, if it's tranquility, it just means it's an arbitrary word. It doesn't mean anything. It's not pointing to anything. There is no prophecy of the tranquility of Yahweh coming, through an Arabian prophet or whatnot. So it's like saying the good feelings spirit thing. Like, okay, it's that means just as much to me as tranquility, with then the extended tafsir justification of it being about like a sign from God that you're on the right path, or things like this. It's like, no, obviously, if we're looking at a orthographic form which is identical from this holy indwelling, that's more reasonable as an interpretation rather than pointing at tranquility, whatever that's supposed to mean. So yeah, then we can look at some other sus cases here. We'll replace them again with Shekinah and just read through the brief parts that are relevant here. So he is he who descended the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, or let's just say the Shekinah, into the hearts of the believers to increase in belief. That's something that I remember, maybe Book of Acts, something like this. Then we continue, and this is all in Surah 48, by the way, we're still here. it says he descended the Shekinah over them. Like, them, we get it, right? You can see the vision here. So, and then the next one we see Allah descended his Shekinah over his messenger. Again with the messenger, his Shekinah over the messenger, over his messenger. So who do we know who has a malak, a messenger, and who has a spirit, and who in history sent his malak on earth, and then his spirit upon his malak, and then his malak sent the spirit to all the followers. It's like, come on, guys, come on. It's too clear. It's too clear. So obviously what happened is they had a word form that they could just not add the dots to, and then they pretended that Sakina was some other word, or it's actually like Sakinat, Sakinatu, right? That they pretend that this is some other word. It's totally fabricated. Yep, so take it away, Jesse. Or do you want to add anything here?
I know this is fine, actually, very, very well explained. And yeah, you're absolutely right. The more of these verses that we unpick, the clearer the picture actually appears in front of us. Although at this point, it should surprise absolutely no one what the book was about. But yeah, on the next slide, then we've added this one just to show people that this is not a unique case where they're actually hiding something in plain sight. We did a show a little while ago where we went through the instances where Jibreel appears in the Quran and also Holy Spirit. So just think about this for a minute. We have the Quran and it actually talks about Al-Ruh Al-Qudus. So we have the Holy Spirit mentioned in the Quran, just like that. Anyone would know immediately Holy Spirit means this book is Trinitarian. It really is that simple. Of course, terms and conditions apply. They borrowed from lots of other sources as well. But the term Holy Spirit is the Spirit of God. However, what did they do? They said, no, that has to be Jibreel. Because if it is not Jibreel, you are acknowledging the Trinity, and then you are in big, big trouble. And exactly the same thing seems to have happened with Shekinah. They have to hide it. So this case with this word tranquility is not unique. We just see a different method that they used. In the case of Holy Spirit, they pointed at that and said, that is Jibreel. And he's like, yeah, right. And with Shekinah, they said, no, that's Sakina, and it's tranquility. And it's like, well, they weren't. They really tried very hard to hide any mentions of the Trinity, even though some are incredibly obvious. And I think having the term Holy Spirit in the Quran is just as obvious as it gets. So this is not a unique case. We keep seeing it more and more. And I think we're very happy to have seen it not only with the Holy Spirit, but now with another word, which it pretty much signifies the same thing.
I have this image in my mind of, it's like, what gave it away? This sort of like, imagine you have the spirit of whatever they did to the text. What gave it away? How did you figure it out? What gave it away? And then you just open up the scroll. It falls to the floor, and then it keeps rolling from the floor from forever on, right? Like, the mentioning of the Holy Spirit, the Shekinah, this. It's like, how could it be more obvious? Please.